Well, we not only volunteers, but we have people to bring us. Oh, you'll have to sit here. She's taking photos. Yeah, I'm sitting here.
Okay. Asking everyone just to take your seats and get ready for an information-packed, exciting session. First, giving honor to God. Is it okay with everybody if I just begin that way? My name is Dr. Henry Morgan, and I will be moderating this session on social value creation. We have been handed a deficit of almost 1 hour, but we will try our best to manage this valuable and fleeting asset called time to see if we can get back on track, if not completely, at least as close to it as possible. Clap your hands, tell you what you're clapping for. Okay, that's all right. I'll take that one. I haven't worked yet anyway. I'll take that one. Clap your hands again, I tell you what you're clapping for. Well, I can't thank everybody on this occasion, but I'm going to single out Professor Neville Ying. I think he deserves a better round of applause than that. I know he was awarded the other night, but relevant to this session, he is chairman for the board of the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. And now I really want a big round of applause. Big one. Come on, clap. Tell me what you're clapping for. Everybody. And that's for those of you who have taken time to travel. They refer to you as the Diasporans, but we refer to you as brother and sister. You know, our fellow Jamaicans who have taken time to come here. I feel so proud of myself today that I can count myself as numbered among you for my 26 years sojourn in another country. So, how many of you know that the Jamaican diaspora is right up there with the Israeli diaspora, the Jews, in terms of loyalty, being loyal to the motherland? Give yourselves a clap. We don't pay you even close to enough credit, and we will find a way to support and serve you better. Just in the way of contextualizing this session, your bulletin, your program, does a pretty good and concise job of that. But let me just say that since you were last here at the seventh staging of this biennial event, a lot of good things have happened. Let me tell you a couple of them. Some years ago, the Social Enterprise Working Group was established. Even before then, Social Enterprise was launched by the SEBI conference, at which Peter Holbrook was the guest presenter. Then following that, the Social Enterprise Working Group at the Planning Institute of Jamaica. Now we have the social enterprise actually written into the micro, small, and medium enterprise policy. And history was made earlier this year when the Jamaica Stock Exchange launched the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. You ought to give that a round of applause if you don't know what it all means. Briefly, what it means is that persons in the diaspora, Jamaicans living away from home, you of course would have your private projects that you support, some of them in your own communities, be they schools or church or feeding programs or whatever. Some of you also come through the channel of Council for Voluntary Social Services, which is a membership umbrella organization for the non-government sector. There is also United Way, which raises, this year their target is 130 million Jamaican dollars, and they receive applications and they wholesale funds to projects. They are obviously the corporate foundations, and now we have basically a crowdfunding platform as stage one of the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, through which you can make your philanthropic gifts to projects that would have gone through a certain measure of due diligence. So that definitely is advancement. That definitely is progress. And today we have a great panel of presenters, and we have panelists who will be speaking to that subsector from their different perspectives, and we will allow time for your questions and to which we will provide answers. But just before I introduce the panel, I'm going to ask you to focus on the screens. We're going to show a very brief video. Because it goes so quickly, let me contextualize it. When the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange was launched, there are 5 enterprises which were initially listed. They are here in the conference center. About halfway down the walk, they actually have a booth where you can visit them. So this brief video kind of encapsulates, you know, this what each of them do. Will you just watch the screen, please? Thank you.
For over 50 years, the Jamaica Stock Exchange has been helping to grow Jamaica by providing a safe, efficient, and transparent space for companies and entrepreneurs to raise needed capital. Now, they have gone even further by turning their attention to the needy social sector, solving real challenges in education, health, urban renewal, and the environment. Investors large and small, we invite you to join us. From as little as $2,500, you can have a positive impact on social projects. Not only that, this investment can also deliver returns to you through the issuance of shares. What are these social projects? After careful and intensive review and analysis, the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange has identified 5 such change makers. They are Dev Can Coffee, Agency for Inner City Renewal, Choose Life International, Alpha Institute, Praise Jamaica. These 5 entities have shown a combination of commitment, innovativeness, and sustainability that will make them ideal candidates. See how we will monitor your investment. Get involved. Click, call, or visit today. JSSE@jamstockex.com. 876-967-3271. The Jamaica Stock Exchange.
I'm just going to ask the persons, hold your applause. I'm going to ask the persons in the room who represent these organizations, would you just stand? Now, will you give them your heartiest congratulations? The Governor General has a little quotable quote. There is nothing wrong with Jamaica that which is right with Jamaica can't fix. And these are the representation of those who are fixing Jamaica. Let's hear it for them again. And the many, the countless thousands like them all across Jamaica. We have a great panel, and we do have presenters and panelists who we'll also hear from. I am not absolutely sure what differentiates presenters from panelists. I'm going to therefore take moderator's license to suggest that it has to do with the duration of the time they spend at the microphone.
Right.
So, we have Mr. Christopher White and Mr. Jason Fraser. They're listed on your program as presenters. I'm going to be asking them to speak for a maximum of 15 minutes. Don't be like me. On Sunday I'm a pastor, and when I go up in the pulpit to preach, they take down the clock and put up a calendar. How embarrassing. I wouldn't want to do that to you. So the first person you're going to hear from is Mr. Jason Fraser, who is the country representative for USAID Jamaica. Mr. Fraser joined USAID in 2001 as a legal advisor in Washington. His career has taken him to several countries across multiple continents, providing support to field missions. A recipient of a number of meritorious and superior honor awards, Mr. Fraser is a graduate of Columbia Law School, the Columbia School of International and Public Affairs, and Bates College. Would you welcome Mr. Jason Fraser?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I am not going to take 15 minutes. I'll try to condense my remarks to the time that we have. But I will say I am very, very glad to be here because I think that this conference really does demonstrate the commitment that so many Jamaicans have in investing in, supporting their country. I'm not Jamaican. My family's from Antigua by nationality, but I grew up in the United States. And when I see Diaspora conferences around the world, I think this is one of the largest groupings that I've seen. And I've been to so many countries around the world. That's true. So I want to say thank you to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade and the Jamaica Stock Exchange for inviting me to deliver remarks during the plenary session on social business enterprises. I'm happy to be here representing the United States government and the United States Agency for International Development in support of this immense thrust towards bridging the financial and social imperatives for sustainable development. Now, despite being a small island state, Jamaica has always been very proactive in devising its own development agenda, scoring well above average in USAID's Journey to Self-Reliance Country Roadmap. What is especially impressive is the spirit of collaboration that is employed as Jamaica seeks to draw on resources from all sectors, business, government, nonprofit, faith-based, to catalyze large-scale investments and change. Indeed, substantially greater progress can be made in alleviating many of the country's most serious and complex social problems if nonprofits, governments, businesses, and the Jamaican diaspora are brought together around a common agenda to create collective impact. And we'll hear about some of that later this afternoon. You may have heard it said that there are some Jamaicans living overseas as there are more Jamaicans living overseas as there are on this beautiful island. What this tells me is that Jamaica's diaspora is a critical partner in helping Jamaica achieve its national goals. In 2018, the Bank of Jamaica reported that net remittance inflows of $2 billion US increased by almost 1% or $19 million relative to the previous corresponding period. You should give each other a round of applause for that. $2 billion. That's more than the GDP of most developing countries. In December 2018, the largest source of remittances to Jamaica was the United States. So I'm glad to say that as well, whose share increased to about 63% over the last year. But while remittances are important, there's so much more that the diaspora can contribute to national development. In this spirit of partnership and collaboration, USAID has been working with Jamaica, with the private sector, civil society, and with average citizens for over 50 years to develop programming to ensure sustainable development outcomes. Areas of investment and collaboration have included market-oriented and government's policy reforms, diversifying the economy, and promoting private sector growth, conservation of natural resources, improving agricultural development, reducing population growth, and alleviating poverty. Now, much like the main theme of the Diaspora Conference, USAID is building pathways for sustainable development. We have been streamlining our programs to work with Jamaica on its path towards further national development. In light of the theme of this plenary session, I would like to highlight 3 USAID-supported projects where enterprise and social development intertwine. In 2012, we partnered with the JN Foundation on the Social Enterprise Boost Initiative to develop and strengthen the business skills of NGOs, non-governmental organizations, with the aim of making them financially sustainable to carry out their social intervention programs. And I'm happy to see the Foundation's General Manager, Onika Barrett-Scott, here today as part of the panel, and she can tell you all about that intervention. USAID also supported community empowerment and transformation project, also known as COMET, focused on citizen security, but had a component that applied the social enterprise approach as a job option for at-risk, unemployed youth, as well as a funding mechanism for social programs. And then there's the Local Partner Development Project, which is one of our newest projects that is expanding on the work of SEBI and working with social enterprises and other civil society organizations to ensure that social change can be effected with a sustainable pathway of self-reliance for organizations. So as I am proud about USAID's support for these programs and social businesses, and we will continue to look to invest in social enterprises here in Jamaica, but we could not do it alone, and much more is needed from them to reach their full potential. The business development training and other resources we provided to these enterprises are only one part of that equation. Without the right enabling environment, for example, social enterprises cannot thrive. Now, I know a lot of work is being done to create a conducive environment, and I commend the government of Jamaica, which has increased efforts to mobilize the diaspora and leverage remittances for development. Within this context, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade created the Diaspora Affairs Department in 2017 with a mandate to develop and strengthen linkages between the government of Jamaica and the Jamaican diaspora in all aspects of national development. Commendations must also be made to the Planning Institute of Jamaica and others who are working hard to leverage and mobilize remittances to boost the social sector in order to make this a reality. The social economy is an important contributor to Jamaica's gross domestic product. I'll say that again. The social economy is an important contributor to Jamaica's gross domestic product. Organizations within the social economy provide jobs. They carry out social programs that the private and public sectors are not interested in or able to do. Can you imagine how much more will be accomplished when the right policies and regulations are in place to support civil society organizations? When fund managers can invest in social programs, and when social enterprises have access to capital that allows them to scale up their programs. In another example, the Jamaica Stock Exchange launch of the Social Stock Exchange, as we just heard at the beginning of this year, is a phenomenal development that will coalesce the financial and social sectors in the drive towards achieving sustainable development for Jamaica. This, yes, it's very important. This initiative represents an innovative mechanism to mobilize private capital for the public good by contributing to the financial viability of the nonprofit sector and social enterprises. It's an excellent example of the private sector realizing the value and contributions of civil society and social enterprises. This is merging financial and social imperatives for sustainable development and for self-reliance. We eagerly await the completion of the social enterprise policy so the full potential of the social stock exchange can be realized. Some of the opportunities that await us include more self-reliant organizations, employment and wealth creation, and a mobilization of more private capital for addressing development issues. If you have any doubt about the positive impact that social stock exchanges can have on development, generally here are some insights from the UK and in Asia. In the UK, standards have improved for social enterprise sector as its ability to benefit from the social stock exchange is driven by accountability and trust. The exchange provides a community where enterprises can scale their businesses and therefore increase their social impact. Enterprises benefit from being part of a network that facilitates learning and sharing, and relationships between enterprises and funders have improved as funders were able to see the impact of their investment. In Asia, impact investment is unlocking capital that is directly impacting millions of lives, as well as technology, education, energy, and health. According to the 2018 Investment Exchange Impact Report, since its inception 10 years ago, the exchange harnessed capital of $94 million to impact 24 million lives. The report further states that approximately 385,000 women are expected to gain sustainable livelihoods by the year 2021 as a result of mobilizing $8 million in private capital through the Women's Livelihood Bond. So the concept of a social stock exchange is still new, and currently there are only about 5 such platforms around the world: in Canada, the UK, Singapore, South Africa, and Brazil. So Jamaica now can count itself as one of those countries that's innovating a new way of raising capital for social enterprises. That's a huge achievement. They all differ in the kinds of activities they take on, as well as who can invest. But it becomes clearer that a growing number of charities, nonprofits, cooperatives, for-profits are applying business models to tackle social problems. A thrust such as this is truly inspiring. As the Jamaica Stock Exchange, leveraging its brand and successes, seeks to galvanize private financing towards sustainable development. As many of you know, one of the major difficulties for social enterprises and civil society organizations is a lack of funding to execute and scale social programs. Most of these organizations rely on donations and gifts. The reality, though, is that over the years, donor funds have been declining, and new funding streams need to be identified to finance social activities. We have a number now of private foundations, private sector charitable organizations, as well as official development assistants that are in the mix. But it really is going to take some more innovative financing mechanisms in order for us to really address the needs that we see today. So it must have been music to the ears of local social innovators and change makers when the Jamaica Stock Exchange answered the call and created a financial pathway for social enterprises and other socially minded entities that are creating solutions to some of these social problems. As mentioned before, USAID, through past and current programs, is strengthening the institutional capacity of social enterprises so they can run successful businesses and track funding. We are therefore pleased working with the Jamaica Stock Exchange Initiative through our local partner development project as they chart the direction of the social stock exchange, which I am convinced will serve as a best practice example not only in the region but also globally. Ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to wrap up by saying that USAID has been in Jamaica for as long as the country has been independent. As a long-standing supporter and partner of Jamaica's development, we have been and continue to be committed to working with the government and people of Jamaica to foster a stable, resilient, prosperous, and inclusive country as Jamaica strives towards achieving its national development goals. the USAID country representative, USAID programming, in partnership with Jamaica, will be and is built around long-term sustainable solutions that reflect our commitment to youth, crime, and violence prevention for the long haul, reducing the high prevalence of HIV/AIDS among key populations, and reducing Jamaica's vulnerability to natural disasters. USAID has a new paradigm. You may have heard about this in Washington, for those of you who are in the US. Our new paradigm focuses on helping our partners become increasingly self-reliant. And that's easy in Jamaica's case, because Jamaicans are already self-reliant and have been for many years. We feel that way because there is really no other legitimate basis for foreign aid that is worthy of the name. But at the same time, we recognize that different countries are at different places in their development journey, and we need to accept and work with them where they are. As USAID Administrator Mark Green has stated, the ultimate goal of development assistance must be to work towards the day when it is no longer needed. It's because of this profound truth that USAID is streamlining its development assistance to help partner countries like Jamaica on their development journey, so they can plan, finance, and implement solutions to their own development challenges, as well as the commitment to see these through effectively, inclusively, and with accountability. We are looking at ways to help lift lives and build communities by incorporating a resilience focus. Looking forward, we'd like to increase our engagement with the private sector on these challenges, with the Jamaican diaspora, particularly the Jamaican diaspora in the United States, since we are USAID, on these challenges because of the energy and innovation that they typically bring to the table. USAID is a learning agency, so we are constantly exploring how to improve our work and increase our impact. So as we streamline our programs and we look for new strategic partners, we invite the diaspora to partner with us as we both work towards the common goal of helping Jamaica achieve self-reliance and resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason, for that very encouraging word. And it's always good to have the support and endorsement of our friends to the north. You do speak on behalf of the United States government, do you? And its president. That was a setup. That was a setup. That was naughty. But no, there's one area in which American policy is always consistent, and it's the friendship to Jamaica and the support for social services, and particularly grassroots services. Would you applaud him again? However, Jason, I gotta tell you, man, you just barely missed out on being recommended to the Governor General for a national award. That is if your presentation had fallen within the prescribed time, which would have been unusual for Jamaica. Even foreigners who live in Jamaica take up our habit and keep it. But you came in right on time. The next presentation is going to be by, and I got to apologize in that I was not actually given a bio for our next speaker, who is Christopher White, but that might save us some time, unless he's like me, who loves to talk about myself. But this next speaker made a tremendous contribution in the UK. We could learn a lot from him. As a member of the Parliament, he did pass a private member's bill, or ask for a vote, I'm not sure how parliamentary procedures go, which really legitimized social enterprise. We have a long way but we have to go, but we have started on the journey. Would you please just welcome Mr. Christopher White, who will tell you a little bit about the work he currently does.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to speak. Thank you for your welcome and your hospitality. What a wonderful country in which you live. It is a genuine honour to be here today and have the opportunity to speak in this discussion. I have heard some great speakers and some great leaders, some inspirational people. Perhaps a conference with more life than what I am used to. And more importantly, a great sense of community. Talking about your young people and your values. The phrase "no one left behind," which resonates very closely with an economy that works for everyone. And the revolutionary idea that smart boards are a waste of money. So, very briefly about myself. I have two interests or passions: industrial strategy and procurement. Okay, I can see that you wonder how you can get very passionate about either of those interests. Am I right?
No.
But those two concepts have the potential to change lives, and what can be more exciting than changing lives? In 2016, when I was still an MP, I called on the government to create an industrial strategy. No one was very interested. And then we had a referendum, and then we had Brexit, and then we had a new Prime Minister, and then we'll have another one along shortly. And then we had a Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. We heard yesterday about the challenges and opportunities of a fourth industrial revolution in Jamaica. Artificial intelligence, augmented reality, autonomous vehicles. And one speaker reminded us that 65% of careers that will be created for those who are still in school are not yet invented yet. The future is coming upon us very fast indeed. About Jamaica being the best performing stock market in the world. How are you amongst the top 6 place in the world to start a business? How youth and general unemployment are down. These, in my view, are functions of industrial strategy. Skills, infrastructure, productivity, innovation, investment, all these things. The best place to do business, and even new business models that apply to the social, the environmental and the economic. But alongside developing industrial strategies, what sort of society do we want to be part of? And I would like to speak about an emerging business model, that of social enterprise. Before I come to do that, I'd like to briefly mention the Social Value Act. When I was elected to Parliament in 2010, very new, very confused, and even more surprised, I signed a private member's bill book, along with hundreds of colleagues. My name came third out of the hat. I had the opportunity to put legislation on the statute book. For many reasons, this was unlikely to happen. I won cross-party support, and every single government department signed up for the legislation that I proposed. And the legislation received royal assent in 2013. Light touch, requiring commissioners to consider social value. And since then, since that time, in less than 9 years, the influence of the Act has grown. Our aim was to change culture. Tenders could not be or should not be measured on price alone. Value in its widest sense must be considered. The Act now influences some 25 billion of government spending. That's 1/10 of the total. Impacting on apprenticeships, helping long-term unemployed find a job, supporting those with mental health conditions, using local suppliers, and what's more, strengthening our communities. We're now looking at ways to measure the Act. In my view, our current accounting methods took 1,000 years to develop, so we can be a little more patient with social value. It's building momentum, gathering friends, and making a difference. My final word of the Act is for that it said, people say that it costs. It is a luxury. It is a burden to business. This is not the case. If it is used properly, the Act actually saves the taxpayer money. Saves the taxpayer money and benefits our community. There are not many pieces of legislation that you can say that about. So returning to social enterprise, some background. There are over 100,000 social enterprises in the UK, contributing 60 billion to our GDP and employing 2 million people. Just for the record, this is where I think people will want social enterprise, will want social value, but there needs to be some definition. And this is what the definition I can give you. It has a primary social or environmental mission. It's transparent, it pays taxes, it reinvests the majority of its profits back into achieving its mission. Its mission is locked into the business. And they cover a huge range of products, going back to Cadbury's, the Quaker movement. We're talking about selling soap, delivering mental health interventions for people in prisons. If you can think of the type of business, there is a social enterprise that is doing it. The sector is bigger than agriculture, 3% of GDP, and employs as many people as our creative industries. The sector is growing fast. And what's more, social enterprises are performing better than traditional business. It grows and contributes more to the UK economy. 50% of all social enterprises are developing a new product or service. The last point is especially important. Why? Because higher values and levels of innovation will deliver higher levels of productivity. Social enterprises are boosting diversity. 41% of social enterprises are led by women. Putting this all together, I hope you would agree, makes for an enviable record. Governments and social enterprises share similar goals. Both want to see a fairer society, a fairer economy, and one where economic growth does not come at the expense of our people or our planet. Social enterprises are the future of business for young people. A quarter of social enterprises are less than 3 years old. And what's more, social enterprise is a global movement. 1 in 3 startups want to achieve social good. 3.2% of the world's entire population are starting social enterprises. I believe the above makes strongly for the case of social enterprise. But returning briefly to social value. In the UK, we had 8 years to test the concept. We now have an archive of case studies from around the country, which proves that when it is put into practice, the public sees the benefit. Social value is moving forward, sustainably and relentlessly, an idea that matches the circumstances in which we find ourselves, and how there are existing models that can be applied here in Jamaica. We relied too much on grants, we relied too much on volunteers. And these things are great, but we need to look for sustainable business models. And social enterprises will help to provide that sustainability. I understand your government recognises the need and is supportive, and there is an appetite. But awareness and understanding needs to be built, as does capacity, so as to contribute to your economy, to create the confidence fostered by government focused on a social mission, which, from what I have heard from this conference so far, every citizen will be proud to be part of. Thank you for listening.
Again, thank you, Chris. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I do recall Peter Holbrook sending me the chronology of actions from inception to where the UK now is. And we are very impatient in Jamaica for progress, but we have a way to go. We have a way to go, but your presentation does encourage us that there is, shall we say, the proverbial pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Give him a hand clap again, it was great. Absolutely. We're going to be telescoping now, both in terms of duration of presentations, as well as a more pointed focus on implementation. And so our next presenter is Mrs. Alenka Jacobs-Bonick. She is a leader in cultural strategy and a specialist in enterprise development for creative and cultural industries. Since 2016, she has led the British Council's Jamaica operations and is also the regional lead for equality, diversity, and inclusion for all 13 British Council offices in the Americas. Even if she messes up with this presentation, she has already earned a round of applause. Just on the basis of your accomplishments and what you continue to do for humanity. Will you make your presentation?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start by thanking the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and our partners, the Jamaica Stock Exchange and the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, for inviting myself to be here today, and I'm pleased to be representing the work of the British Council. I'd also like to say welcome to our fellow panelists. Many of you are our partners in the field, so it's wonderful to be here again with you. So the British Council is the UK's international organisation for cultural relations and educational opportunities. We have offices in over 110 countries around the world. In the Americas, we have 13 offices, which 3 are in the Caribbean: Jamaica, Cuba, and Trinidad. In Jamaica, we specifically work in 4 key areas of work: education, which otherwise is known as basic education in the UK, but here it's around working with primary schools and secondary schools. We work in the arts and the creative economy. We also work in something we call society, which is where we have been doing most of our work in social enterprise, which I will share with you as we go through this presentation. We also, very importantly, have a 4th area of work: equality, diversity, and inclusion. Although this is a policy of the British Council, and we are mandated as an organization to mainstream equality, diversity, and inclusion throughout all our work, we in Jamaica as a team decided that it was a very important part of what we had to do. So we programmatized it. And although it's not a part of our budget, we find a way to ensure that we are able to include aspects of equality, diversity, and inclusion in all of the work that we do. So for us in Jamaica, it's our 4th program area. We promote the development of social enterprise as a means of addressing, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be using this, right? Does it work?
Point to that. Point it the other way. The other way, that way.
That way? There you go. Okay. Except you can't see it there. Oh, there, okay. So, we promote the development of social enterprise as a means of addressing entrenched social and environmental problems and delivering positive change to our communities and societies. You spoke about the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I would like to introduce you to one of the pot of golds. That is one of the schools that we work with in our social enterprise and secondary schools program, Holland High School, and I'll tell you some more about that. There are 14 such programs around Jamaica based on our social enterprise secondary school program, and they are the pot of goals that we should be investing in. Our work draws on UK and global experience and is delivered across 29 countries with local and international partners. Together we provide social entrepreneurs with access to training, mentoring, and funding opportunities, promote social enterprise education in schools and universities, convene policy dialogues, conduct research, and organize study tours to share knowledge and best practice in creating an enabling environment for social enterprise, deliver international development actions that focus on social enterprise, and is a dynamic approach that we use and have designed to help foster a more sustainable, inclusive, and prosperous future, and build collaboration, opportunities, and trust between the UK and other countries. Specifically in Jamaica, we co-design and co-deliver our social enterprise programs with local and international partners, many of whom are here with us today. So the Ministry of Education, the Victoria Mutual Foundation, the Real Ideas Foundation in the UK, and local social entrepreneurs are all our partners in our flagship social enterprise in secondary schools program. And here you can see an image from one of the 14 social enterprise awareness days that we have held around the country. The Social Enterprise in Secondary Schools program is also one of our flagship programs. It is the only one of its kind in the Americas region and in the British Council, and it is now a best practice model. And we are very proud of that. FHI 360, Social Enterprise UK. FHI 360 is an agency of USAID. Social Enterprise UK and the Jamaica Stock Exchange are our partners in the Social Enterprise Mapping Project, where we worked with them to identify the baseline and have a better understanding of what the social enterprise sector looks like. The Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries and the Planning Institute of Jamaica are our partners on policy development. All of these interventions contribute directly to 3 key policy activities as defined in the implementation plan developed for the MSME and entrepreneurship policy. These are ensuring awareness of the social enterprise concept as a part of the business ecosystem, collecting national data on the value being created by social enterprises, and supporting capacity building. The mapping specifically, as I said before, will establish a baseline from which to monitor, grow, and shape the ecosystem for social enterprise in Jamaica, giving us information on, for example, the scale of social enterprise activity, which can help policymakers engage, track impact, and make appropriately targeted interventions. The data collected will also be useful for investors like yourselves, leading to a better understanding of current patterns in levels and types of finance, funding, provision, and the gaps. Now, our program impact for the Social Enterprise in Secondary Schools program. We have so far trained 48 teachers from 14 schools. We have delivered 14 social entrepreneurship awareness days, reaching over 5,500 students. Over 264 students are actively participating as members of social enterprise clubs as a result of this program. 7 Jamaican-based social enterprises and 3 government institutions support the program delivery in schools. Mentors from the Victoria Mutual Group support and provide expertise to students in terms of business planning and business development and financial literacy. And the Victoria Mutual Foundation to date has handed over $1,250,000 Jamaican dollars to 14 schools to start up their social-based enterprises as seed funding. I think we can give them a round of applause for that. So here's a graphic of what you heard Chris speaking about earlier, the way social enterprises contribute to sustainable development, particularly in the UK. As you can see, 60 billion pounds worth to the UK GDP, 2 million social entrepreneurs, 5% of the UK workforce, and 42% of social enterprises are led by women. But in addition to this, the social enterprise sector also contributes to enhancing the corporate supply chain and the growth of the responsible finance sector. So in the UK, the impact of the social economy has been evident in many sectors, as Chris has mentioned. The 2017 State of Social Enterprise Report is the largest, most representative survey of the social enterprises in the UK. It shows a commercially resilient sector outperforming mainstream SMEs when it comes to turnover growth, innovation, business optimism, startup rates, diversity in leadership, and more. And it points, as Chris said, towards the future of business. Complementing this report, we have the Hidden Revolution report, which was launched in September 2018 by Social Enterprise UK. And the report again looks at the economic scale and contribution of social enterprise, which is considerably higher than previous estimates. Another way social enterprises have a positive effect on the business environment in the UK and worldwide, as I mentioned, by enhancing corporate supply chains. Corporate supply chains represent a significant opportunity to achieve social impact. Increasingly, businesses are choosing to purchase from social enterprise suppliers, and I can say that having worked for almost 20 years in the charity sector in the UK, we benefited from the Social Value Act, and I saw this in action. So they're choosing to purchase from social enterprise suppliers who can provide high quality products and services whilst delivering social value, enabling companies of all sizes to achieve greater social engagement with local communities, operate more sustainably, and do business with a more positive and social environmental impact. Social businesses are also optimistic about their growth and are looking for expected increases in revenues within their upcoming fiscal year in the UK. Our partnerships here in Jamaica will help to drive this growth once we make targeted interventions at various levels. Another area of interest, I feel, is the growth of the responsible finance sector in the UK, otherwise known as alternative investments. This sector is also another example of positive impact investing in the social economy. According to a report in 2018 in Responsible Finance, the UK's ethical responsible finance sector grew by 19.8% in 2018. Responsible finance supported thousands of credit-worthy businesses and social enterprises that were otherwise rejected or unable to access finance from mainstream lenders, hence the importance of the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. New research conducted in 2018 also demonstrated that responsible finance providers lent a total of £254 million, of which £138 million was lent to only 475 enterprises, which is 112 more than in 2017, but this created and saved over 4,000 jobs. Evidence in Jamaica shows that many social enterprises rely much on volunteerism and grants to start their faith, to start businesses. The environment has thus been created through the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, where social enterprises are able to access financial support, as well as services and products that can be twinned with other forms of capacity building that will improve their scalability. So in this image, it's one of our partners, 360 Recycling. And I thought this was interesting because, of course, in addition to all of the financial and business information that we speak about in terms of social entrepreneurship, it's important to understand that, as all small businesses do, social enterprises contribute to some of the pressing issues that our cities face. And they do so by supporting inclusive growth and contributing to deep, efficient capital markets. So social enterprises support inclusive growth and innovative solutions to some of the issues that our cities face. In recent decades, we have seen an increase in the significance and influence of the city and the city region, economically and politically, as well as socially and culturally. Across the world, city regions are engines of growth, trade, cooperation, and exchange. They're increasingly powerful and influential on the global stage. Moreover, cities in many countries are taking over from national governments in terms of their leadership. And I feel that this is where social enterprise really hits home for us in Jamaica. While countries still negotiate high-level agreements, a growing number of cities are developing their own international strategies and city-to-city relationships. This is where the strength of the diaspora comes in. Very importantly, investing in the social economy can also contribute to developing domestic capital markets, social capital markets to be exact, by creating opportunities for impact investment, which we have heard. Now, this is again where the social stock exchange is absolutely critical. Having a stock exchange forces transparency and control due to the reporting requirements. And that transparency increases investor confidence. So it increases your confidence to want to invest in social projects and social businesses in Jamaica. So the more investor confidence we have, the more people will invest in social enterprise. This means that we have more buyers and more sellers in the market, more return on your investment. That deepens the market and contributes to efficiency. So the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange is extremely critical in the development of our social enterprise sector here. Deep and efficient local capital markets create access to long-term local currency finance, mobilize funds for key sectors such as infrastructure, reduce dependency on foreign debt, and are essential for a thriving private sector, the key engine for growth and jobs. And just to complement what my colleague was saying about the enabling environment, in addition to supporting the growth of the actual business, we also have to consider the importance of investment readiness. Many times we want to invest. We invest through vehicles such as the Social Stock Exchange or the Jamaica Stock Exchange, but our recipients on the other end are not ready to receive that investment. So that's why the Social Stock Exchange has actually selected 5 businesses that they feel are ready. However, in terms of diaspora investment, outside of the Social Stock Exchange, this is somewhere that we can have an impact in supporting the capacity and building the capacity of our social enterprises to receive the investment that you will eventually put in. So I feel that that is another important area of work. As you mentioned, you're doing that with USAID. And if you can contribute to that, that would be extremely helpful in growing our social enterprise sector. Of course, social enterprises also create jobs. And on the topic of job creation, evidence suggests that young people are far more motivated by values and ethics in the workplace and by achieving social impact from the work they do. This is increasingly important and is evidenced in multiple reports, including the Deloitte Millennium Survey and the RBS Tracker report. In addition, a recent British Council study on youth entrepreneurship conducted by the Centre for Leadership and Governance at UE found that a number of our school clubs, such as the 4-H clubs, have the potential to progress to become social enterprises. As a matter of fact, the work that we're doing through our Social Enterprise Secondary Schools program has given these clubs the opportunity to take the next step to becoming social enterprises. Many schools also have technical vocational training, TVET classes, and facilities which could be repurposed or adapted to develop income and pursue social goals. So if we're going to train young people who are already motivated to start social businesses, we must build and facilitate the environment that allows them to be permanently employed, either in their own businesses or in another social enterprise. This is possible with the support and the partnerships developed through coordination with investors like yourselves and partners from the diaspora through the various sectors such as agriculture, arts, tourism, and the creative industries. The British Council and our partners believe that social enterprises can also bring these benefits to Jamaica. They have the potential to address many social issues, as you have heard, and are seen as an especially appealing and plausible pathway to livelihood opportunities for young people. What we are hoping to accomplish with our program is to close the school-to-work transition gap. That is essentially the objective. The objective is, yes, to teach young people social entrepreneurship skills, and we do that by training the teachers in these skills, and they impart this through their lessons, but we are looking at closing the school-to-work transition gap and being a contributor to that. Through the social economy in Jamaica, we see that there is the opportunity to support large numbers of young people who are interested in the entrepreneurial solutions that are socially focused and to develop skills. For us to realize a more lasting change, greater emphasis is to be placed on partnerships with investors to educate young people. Social entrepreneurship education leads to jobs, it leads to business development. Constantly improving policies that support young people to learn and participate in the social business sector is where we want to focus our efforts going forward. So thank you very much for listening. And I have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Alenka, for your very informative presentation. Could I also thank you for your service and also for the service of the British Council, particularly your school-based program, where you're showing young people the path to doing well by doing good. Give her a hand clap. Who is a social enterprise? As a presentation the other day where somebody declared that Marcus Garvey was the first social entrepreneur, I should say, social entrepreneur. He just didn't know it. He just did his work. There's another, Diana McIntyre Pye. Yeah, I'm exposing you. Stand up. You got to get an applause for what you're doing in Jamaica. The first person I heard mention community tourism. Thank you. We need to honor people who are doing work, but their names are not necessarily up there in neon lights. The next presenter will be Mrs. Anika Barrett-Scott, who came to Jamaica from another country. Got a little bit more than she came for. You got married, didn't you? All you people in the diaspora who want good man, come back at Jamaica. But after you married, you're there on your own. Come look to me for no help. Clap your hands for the Jamaican men. Best lovers in the world. You say you're not a Jamaican, you're going to say different now. All right. Mrs. Barrett Scott is the General Manager for Jamaica National Foundation. Really a project more than an organization. The SEBI that I'm talking about, with the support of USAID. Actually, we're trailblazers in formalizing social enterprise, social entrepreneurship in Jamaica. Mrs. Barrett Scott's key areas of focus in her career have included poverty reduction, access to justice, and corporate social responsibility. Having worked in both the private and NGO sectors, she brings a unique perspective to the field of development. Would you give her a down payment? And if she does good at the end, would you give your final installment? Everybody in Jamaica know that man. Them all have furniture from courts. Right? Down payment, installments, final installment. Come, Anika, make your presentation.
So much, Dr. Morgan. Now, how do I get off an introduction like that and concentrate on my presentation? I'll try my very best. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to present and tell a story that I think is really important to be told. Just in terms of understanding, we were talking a lot about social enterprise, and that word has become something that is so common now. But where has it started, and where did all of this begin? It really started with a dream and a vision. Everyone knows the phrase, Jamaica, a place of choice to live. What's the rest of it? And do business, correct. And for each of us that means something. When we hear it or when we see it or when we think it, we have our own vision of what that means for us. And back in 2007, Jamaica National, through the JN Foundation, through its foundation, we had a dream for a change that we could make in the community of Augusttown at the time. And for us, we really wanted to contribute to making a positive difference in Augustown in a way that would be sustainable. In other words, we wanted to be sure that if we pumped some needed funds there, how could we be sure that a number of years later we could come back and see the resources still being utilized by the community, and not necessarily that doors are closed and lights are off and it's the end of it, and you hear a story about what didn't happen and so forth. And so that's where we started in 2007. And what that gave rise to was us creating a center which we call the Source Community Center. But what was different about that? What was different is part of the concept for that community center was deciding that from the very get-go, that center needed to be able to generate its own income to contribute to meeting the needs in the community, but at the same time, paying for the necessary things like the light bill and the water bill and all the things that come with wanting to do good. And so from the very get-go, there had to be an involvement of the community in terms of understanding what are some of the services that you need here, and what are some of the services that you're willing to pay for. And that income that would be generated from offering those services would then be pumped back into keeping the doors open and ensuring that the community had a space where they could go to utilize the internet, where they could go to mail things out, where they could go to have a space if they had a small business, they could have their own little office, and so forth. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was essentially where we started with our work in social enterprise, and that was in 2007. Fast forward to 2008 over 2010, we went on to create 4 more of those centers in Ocho Rios, in Savlamar, in Marvely, as well as in Treasure Beach. But after that, we recognized that there is one challenge that we had. We could keep creating centers, but that was not really our intention. What we wanted to do was ensure that Jamaicans could see that there actually is a model that could be really sustainable in terms of how you address some of the most pressing needs across the country, but at the same time, didn't have to worry too much about, oh, we may not have enough funds to keep this going, but in fact, it could sustain itself. And what we realized is that, well, we could keep doing this until whenever, but at the end of it, if there isn't an enabling environment to support it, it's going to die. And so what we did at that time was create a project by the name of the Social Enterprise Boost Initiative. And that project had some key goals. One of them was we wanted to make social enterprises efficient businesses. At the same time, we wanted to create a much more enabling environment around social enterprise creation. And also, we wanted to raise awareness about what social enterprises are. Because at the end of the day, today we're talking about it, but go back in time to 12 years ago when we started this journey, social enterprise was not as much of a buzzword. And so with Social Enterprise Boost Initiative, we were able to, through the partnership of USAID, engage in another 6 years of incubation and acceleration. What that meant is that over the 6-year period, we would have worked with 35 enterprises, 35 social enterprises, in giving them access to training on how do you keep proper records, how do you market your business, how do you do your own types of procurement, how do you manage your finances, all of the things that are critical and essential to businesses being successful. Now, what was novel about this is that we're actually talking to organizations that are typical social actors, typical NGOs. But the challenge they're all facing is we don't know where our next pot of money is coming from to keep delivering these services to the community. But by helping them to identify ways in which they could trade with goods and services that could generate income, and that income then be put back into offering the social services, where we're in fact helping them to become social enterprises. And so over 6 years, 35 enterprises with accessing that type of trading through first incubation, and then following that through acceleration, which culminated in 2018. And who are some of those enterprises we're talking about? We're talking about Superior Craft and More. which was one that really caters to persons who are visually impaired. We're talking about mustard seed communities. We're also talking about the source in Savlamar, which was another one that we created over time. JAD binders that really caters to the deaf community. And you've heard about DEFCAN, because DEFCAN is one of the enterprises that's now listed on the Social Stock Exchange. And DEFCAN was actually a member of our incubator over a long period of time, and then our accelerator program. And so you can imagine what it feels like to know that they have now come to a place where they have not only achieved growth in terms of the income they're generating, but they've been able to provide jobs for members of the deaf community. And more so, to be able to do it so well that they can now be listed on the Social Stock Exchange to be able to access much more opportunities and investment. So that's really a proud moment for the sector. But it didn't stop there. What this really was about was recognizing that, yeah, we started with a dream that really started in the community of Augustown and what we wanted to do there. But over time, through many partnerships and many lessons learned, we were able to go to other communities across Jamaica. But for the SEBI project itself, the Social Enterprise Boost Initiative, the first critical partnership was with USAID, helping us to be able to carry out that work over the 6-year period. But then there were so many other friends that we made along the way that were critical. In 2015, at the Diaspora conference in 2015, I actually was able to engage with Ms. Charmaine Brim from the Planning Institute of Jamaica. And what we realized at that conference is that we had a similar interest, which was, we're all doing great work, but we really need a piece of legislation or policy or something that ensures that this work can continue into perpetuity. And through that conversation, we were then able to start the working group that Dr. Morgan would have mentioned before, which then became migrated over into the Ministry of Industry, and then is now become a critical inclusion in the MSME and entrepreneurship policy, which now speaks to social enterprise and has a group set up just to monitor what the sector is doing and what types of support that sector requires. And so that was a critical partnership that will have emerged over the time. There's also a photo there that shows Jamaica Social Exchange, and what was that? This is not the Social Stock Exchange as you know it today. What this actually is that the Social Enterprise Boost Initiative project in 2017, when we held our summit at the beginning of the year, every other year, we created a summit where we just brought together a myriad of actors. We would have had persons from the UK, we would have had persons from other parts of the globe, as well as Jamaicans that are making changes right here at home. And at that time, we wanted to conceptualize how could we get people to think about social enterprises in a really serious way? How could we get to change the perception from just being these social, little NGO somewhere that's doing something and trying to sell something on the side? And how could we get people to see them as, no, these are investment-worthy organizations that we're talking about? And at that time, we said, let's create them and display them like a stock exchange, except that it would be a social stock exchange. And would you know that by 2018, that actually became a reality because the Jamaica Stock Exchange had been working on that concept for some time. So now, we are very pleased to be able to support the Social Stock Exchange as it continues to do the work to support this sector, because as Olayinka would have mentioned as well, investment is critical, and the Social Stock Exchange offers such an avenue. We would have also engaged, there's a big bus with a bi-social mark on the side of it. We were able to engage in a partnership with the National Baking Company that would have allowed for a lot of their buses to display this mark. But what does that mark mean? We really have a vision that one day you'll be able to walk into many, many supermarkets and other types of businesses that display this mark. And what this mark means is that you're about to pick up a good or you're about to purchase a service where the income that you're paying over money for that good or service, but that money is actually going to assist someone in a community somewhere because it's actually being produced by a social enterprise. And so for a period of time, thank you, for a period of time, we actually had buses all over the place with that mark and people wondering, what is that? That's exactly what it was. Because what we've come to realize is that to really address a lot of the problems that we're facing in Jamaica, it's not possible to do the same things in the same ways that we've done it. And so this project was really meant to be something that became a game changer. But I don't even think we recognize where it would get to today. And so it's really good to know that today the sector is filled with so many actors, so many agencies, so many individuals that are talking about social enterprises, that are supporting social enterprises, that are incubating and accelerating and so forth. It is really a good thing to see because it augurs well for where Jamaica could go in terms of addressing some of the social issues we're facing. But then let's talk about the impact. You know, that's a great story. Yes, that's what we wanted to do, but did it really make a difference? Well, you could decide. These were some of the things that would have happened over that period of time. I mentioned we would have worked directly with 35 social enterprises where we were able to give them access to training that were meant to strengthen them as businesses. And I'll tell you, one of the critical lessons learned in all of this is that it's not the easiest of tasks when you want to take an organization that's always seen itself as a charity and suddenly tell them, no, but you can also be a business. It's two different mindsets. And so a critical lesson learned for a lot of our agencies in this work was you actually need to hire a business development manager or someone with that type of skill set who can manage the business for you while you focus on the social side of it. That was a critical lesson learned for us. And it augured well for the agencies that actually did it. But apart from the 35 social enterprises that we worked with directly, we were also able to network with over 100 of them because we created what we refer to as an open network, where there are times when we had trainings that were specific for our incubatees, but there were times we would open that up and just invite others to come in and learn and experience and find out. And that was so inspirational in terms of catalyzing the sector. We would also have created what we call the Social Enterprise Toolkit, where persons could go on the sevijm.com website and actually download a document that gave them the A to Z of if you were interested in becoming a social enterprise, how could you go about doing so? And so that toolkit became a really critical input for the sector. Over 10,000 beneficiaries were served by the various enterprises that we would have worked with. So here we're talking about, yes, we're trying to help them become businesses and enterprises and whatnot, but at the same time, they were touching the lives of over 10,000 people and helping to make those lives better. At the same time, over 200 jobs were created. Now this number speaks mostly to the full-time jobs were created and the part-time jobs that were created. But then we also had so many volunteer opportunities being created, and with volunteerism, persons were able to access stipends, and these things made differences to them. But I think the part that is really, for us, really inspirational is that over that period of time, over $166 million in revenue would have been generated by these enterprises. So that's $166 million created that wasn't quite there before, that could go back into these enterprises so they could touch the lives of more beneficiaries that they were serving. And these beneficiaries, I should mention that the enterprises were working in a number of areas. So whether they were impacting youth, whether they were dealing with issues in education, whether they were addressing the environment, like 360 Recycle, which was mentioned earlier, where what they're doing is simply going around and collecting plastic and using the plastic to make the most amazing pieces of garden furniture that you can imagine. And sometimes when you sit on it, you don't even know that you're sitting on plastic. But that's a critical thing for Jamaica, because when we walk around, what do we see? We do see the litter. So this organization offered another solution to how we could help to address that problem. And a future of sustainability and impact. What do I mean by that? For us, it's not over. Because Typical of Jamaica National, we are willing to invest in visions, in dreams, in things that we rarely see can make a huge impact and just disrupt the issues that we're experiencing. Part of the sustainability feature of this project was the creation of an organization by the name of Social Enterprise Jamaica, an organization that would exist into time, that can continue to support the social enterprise sector, that can continue to offer training, that continue to incubate, accelerate, become a vehicle through which persons can think of investment, and most critically, like a DEFCON, like an Alpha Institute that are listed on the social stock exchange, the question is, how do you get organizations ready for the social stock exchange? How do you get them ready for investment? A Social Enterprise Jamaica is one such actor that would act in that way to be able to give the types of training that's needed to prepare the organizations to make them ready for other opportunities such as this. And so that's part of our vision now. We've created the business plan, we've started to galvanize the partnerships, and pretty soon this becomes a reality. But again, it's really about how could we address some of the most pressing social issues in a way that could be incredibly impactful, but also very sustainable. Because at the end of the day, we all are interested in one thing, which is a Jamaica that is a place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anika, for enumerating. I love these presentations, which really just a list of results. Jamaica, too much talk. We want action, not a bag of mouth. Give her a hand clap. Over this side said, what go on? Over here said, nothing's a go on in a JA. Oh, Lord of mercy, man. Obama has a more Jamaican accent than you guys. We're going to see how we can compress it. Lunch is ahead of us. Hope it don't turn to supper. The next speaker is Mr. Christopher Chaplin. He's actually Jamaica's Honorary Consul in Philadelphia. Christopher serves, as I said, in that role, and he is, by occupation, an investment officer at Opportunity Finance Network, an organization that manages an investment portfolio of over US $600 million, and that invests debt and equity in community development, financial institutions, impact investment funds, and credit unions. I almost was going to say, expect a call from Trenchtown tomorrow. An application that ends by saying, in the United States. But we know knowledge and certainly resources are transferred across the globe these days with just a click of a mouse, $3 trillion US every day. So anything can happen. Minister, you're going to make it happen. Would you stand, Minister, and just give a royal to everybody? Thanks for coming today. Give her a hand. See, politics can't be that bad because any minister who can have a smile like yours, it certainly is not all stress. Sir, would you address the conference?
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith, Ambassador Audrey Marks-Asar earlier, and Acting Consul General Lisa Brand-Smart for their ongoing support of my appointment in Philadelphia. I'd also like to acknowledge the staff, the team here of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade who've done an outstanding job taking care of this conference. I'm involved in a lot of investment conferences in the United States, and It's not everywhere you can get porridge and pudding in the morning. So thank you all. What I'd like to do in the time, and for a bit of housekeeping for the staff, please don't run the video. I think we're a bit short of time, and I want to respect the time. What I'd like to do in the time that I have is to take us to where we are with regard to diaspora investment and sort of define where we ought to go, or where I believe we ought to go, and certainly change mindsets. I think in an email I sent to Dr. Nebling, I indicated that one of the things we need to do is change mindsets. Sure. We ought to be speaking about donations and gifts. We ought to be looking at investments. And so, currently, in terms of diaspora investment, there are a number of platforms. I will touch on UJA, Union of Jamaican Alumni Associations, and I'm sure you've heard Leslie Ann speak yesterday. There are alumni associations, medical groups, Farm Up Jamaica, and I apologize for the churchgoers here. I miss churches. Churches are actually a big vehicle for investment in Jamaica. I don't call it donations, I don't call it gifts. They're investing in our country. They're investing in the future of our country. So those for me are investments. There are also direct investments in terms of remittances, etc. A lot of that goes to household expenses, but some portion do go to social enterprises and social business enterprises. There are also crowdfunding platforms which have gained popularity in the last few years, and certainly ONICA with I Support Jamaica has been one of the forefront local crowdfunding platforms. There are a number of US-based crowdfunding platforms as well. So, given where we are, and we'll skip the video. Well, I think we're kind of short of time. And so I just want to talk about elements of impact investment. And certainly the first I would point to is intentionality. And what that means is that you can't be investing with the thought that you might have good side effects, good social effects. Going in, there must be an understanding of what it is, or the reason for your investment, and what the social impact is going to be. The second element is an expectation of investment returns. And what that means is that you can't slowly be investing for social reasons. There has to be a clear financial return, and it has to be numerical in context. It has to be 3, 5, 8%. The third bullet, range of return expectations, refers to the asset classes that one can use to invest. So it could be private equity, it could be subordinated debt, it could be senior debt, and there are a range of those that have various return expectations with them. And lastly, which I think is most important, especially for Jamaican-based organizations, there has to be an understanding that you have to be able to measure impact. It's not enough to say, well, it's going to reduce smog, it's going to do this. You have to be able to provide a numerical measure on that impact. I enjoyed Angela, I think her name is Angela Rainbow's presentation yesterday. It was excellent. And she was very clear on what her impact measurements were. I think it comes from her Wall Street training, but it was excellent. I'll just touch on a few examples. These are deals I actually transacted in the last 6 months since the beginning of the year. The first was Grameen, and that's particularly interesting because of all the naysayers. Grameen, if you recall, was a bank founded in Bangladesh by Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus, and they expanded to the United States I think about some 20 years ago. And I remember I was working for a large corporate bank, and every single one of my colleagues said this would fail, that there would be no business model to lending to low-income immigrant women in the United States. It was not needed. Well, 20 years later, Grameen is a huge success. They have one of the lowest default rates in the United States. I think it's less than 5%. And they have grown tremendously. I think they're hitting 200 million in assets. And what was particularly interesting is that they came to us, they needed about $1 million this year just to help them to boost up their loan capital. And I looked at the deal and I was able to look at their business model, and it's tremendous. I'm sure most of us will remember Partner. And that's how they're exactly structured in terms of a group of a circle of women getting together to support each other and make sure each one of them is successful. And I was able to get them 3% the subordinated debt over 10 years. The second is Black Business Investment Fund of Florida, which is a fund that provides funding to financing to black-owned businesses in Florida. And again, the focus is on social impact, helping black businesses grow. Right, so what's the future? What do we look for the future? But we know where we are now. What are we trying to get to? I have to commend Marlene. I think Marlene's over here, when she was. And she is the managing director of the Jamaica Stock Exchange. And they've done truly an outstanding job with the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. I think it's remarkable what they've been able to pull off. I had the pleasure of hosting her in Philadelphia a few years ago, and I think sometimes we underestimate our own folks because the Philadelphia Stock Exchange loved her. I think if she wanted to, they'd have had her on the spot. She was that impressive, and commendations to the Jamaica Stock Exchange for the work they're doing. I'm aware of sometimes they have for the Jamaica Impact Investment Exchange, which I think is a sort of a step beyond the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, and I hope hopefully that will come on stream. I think they're working through the legislation, and so we'll see how that goes. Finally, I'm proposing a US-based Diaspora Managed Impact Investment Fund. I think there's an appetite for that, given what we know about the bond fund from Jamaica. I'm not sure where we are now. I don't know that it's going to fly, given some of the restrictions in terms of adding to the national debt. But the diaspora can come up with a small fund, the US $10 million fund. So I'm putting that out there for you all to think about in terms of launching. And the reason for a lot of these initiatives is, the speakers here alluded to it earlier, they did an excellent job. There's transparency. With the discipline that you incur going onto an exchange, you have to provide financial records, impact measurements, and the like. And so there's good transparency. There's liquidity. If you're an exchange, if you're an investor in a company that's on an exchange, you have liquidity. You can sell your shares. These social business enterprises also provide a social return on investment and a financial return on investment. And so what are our next steps? I know there have been many conversations about what do we want to come out of this conference with. And so I propose basically three next steps. Firstly, coordinated marketing of the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. And what that means is that we in the diaspora need to assist in that. There are obviously some rules as regards to the Securities and Exchange Commission and the ability to publicly promote specific. I'm actually meeting the Securities I'm making a speech to the Securities and Exchange Commission in about 2 weeks, and so that's one of the topics hopefully that can be brought up. I'd love to see a diaspora active engagement in the Jamaica Impact Investment Fund. And when I say direct, I believe, certainly at the board level, that we ought to have some diaspora involvement in almost every government board in Jamaica, and certainly on the stock exchange. Finally, I'd like again to just reiterate that there is room for a diaspora-managed US-based Jamaica Impact Investment Fund. For certain reasons, I can't get involved directly because of potential conflicts of interest. But any support I can give you, I have a fairly big Rolodex I'm glad to provide. But there is that appetite, and we have the money in the diaspora. So those are my comments. I look forward to any questions you may have, and that's my contact information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. Oh, by the way, thank you. When we were in the back and I walked in, you said you look just like a movie star. Will you have a lady tell that to me? In Jamaica, we don't really kiss men. Okay. Give him a hand clap. Thank you. It's just amazing seeing the opportunities, the different things that are happening, and the role that the diaspora is playing, you know, just providing so many channels for persons to come to the assistance of their home country. Now, we purposefully left the best for the last, and that's in the person of Miss Yvonne Field, who is founder and managing director of UBEL Initiative, London, UK. Mrs. Yvonne Field has spent 4 decades working with grassroots organizations, from line staff, senior managers, and policymakers. Her sphere of influence has been in local, national, and international government, civil society organizations, the corporate sector, the English-speaking Caribbean, Asia, South America, and mainland Europe. It was in 2014 that she established the UBEL, almost said Uber, initiative, which is the future, a social enterprise developing sustainable community spaces through intergenerational leadership, community enterprise, and social action. And to date, UBEL has worked with 23 countries. Now here's a woman, it's obvious, just look at her. She has a big smile on her face. You can't see, but she has an even bigger heart in her chest and even a bigger vision in her sight. Will you welcome her? Yvonne.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, come on, I know you're waiting for your lunch, but you can do it a little bit later. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come here and to speak to you today. I'd like to especially thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and particularly Ambassador Saunders for suggesting that I came and making it possible. My diaspora connections are that my family, my parents, and 5 of my siblings are from Portland. Any Porty people here? Okay, good. And they do say, and I think I have to concur, that it is one of the most beautiful parts of the island. Yeah? Okay. Even those people who aren't from Porty say that to me, so I think I'm not just standing on, sort of grandiose grounds. I was born in the UK, I was born in London. Okay, UK contingents, who's here? There's a few of us here, good. And I actually have to make a confession. I've spent the last 25 years in Africa, in different parts of Africa, living and working between there and the UK. So it took me a quarter of a century to come back to Jamaica. So at the age of almost 60, I'm reclaiming my Jamaican roots and heritage. I came in December and I'm back today. So I'm on a stiff learning curve, but also I know that our Jamaicans have welcomed me with open arms, so it's been fantastic to be here. So thank you. In terms of what I'm going to say this afternoon, I'm going to talk about an initiative that I've been active in the UK. And hopefully from that I'll draw some lessons about what I feel might be appropriate and relevant for the social enterprise sector in Jamaica. And also, I have to say, as a member of the Jamaican diaspora in the UK, I've also got some messages for us as diaspora from the UK, which might also resonate with diaspora groups, Jamaicans from the UK and USA. So kind of bear with me, please, as I kind of tell this story. The name of the organisation that I've established is UBEL. It's taken from Swahili, and it means the future all the way ahead. In a way, this was part of blue sky thinking. It was a little bit before its time, but now, over the last 6-7 years, it's kind of caught up with the movement around social entrepreneurship and social enterprise in the UK. So I'll tell you a little bit about this. Okay, so, I mean, it's really great in one way to be the last speaker because you hear things on the stage that your colleagues have actually also said. And so you sit there thinking, actually, I must be in the right place because we're all singing from a similar hymn sheet. So just in terms of the social enterprise sector in the UK, it's been suggested by 2 of my colleagues already. We've taken, I think, from the same source, that actually the sector is large, it's growing. It's actually 100,000 social enterprises, 2 million people working in it, and £60 billion being contributed to the economy. There are so many different actors in the social enterprise space in the UK that can be really confusing. It was confusing for myself, and actually my background, although I'm from the social system, I actually have been in business for the last 20 years. I set up a company that did training, consultancy, organisational development, change management with health, education, social services, youth services, voluntary sector. So I did that for nearly 20 years. So that was before social enterprises became in vogue. So I kind of learned to do business from a long time ago. But actually, even understanding what our sector looks like in the UK is often confusing, particularly if you want to start up. But obviously we have a range of actors and investors. We also have, some significant grant aiders like our lottery fund. They give a lot of support to social enterprise. And then obviously we have Social Enterprise UK that was mentioned earlier. And actually we're a member of Social Enterprise UK, and I had a request this morning, just this morning an email came through asking our organisation to contribute to the biannual research programme and research that Social Enterprise UK does to enable them to see what's happening in the sector. So every 2 years they do an annual State of the Nation on social entrepreneurship and put that data out there for everyone to know what's happening. So Ubele started with me being curious, curious about sustainability, curious about the sustainability actually of Black, Caribbean and African communities actually in the UK. And the curiosity was, and I think those of you are here because I reckon, like myself, the average age is probably over 50 in the conference. Am I right? There was a young man yesterday who posed a challenge about the youth. There was a young woman I was speaking to the other day when I first arrived on Sunday who was saying we need to actually convene as young people. So I was curious because my parents came. I'm a child of Windrush. I was born in England. My parents came from Jamaica, from near Manchaniel, if anybody knows that. From near Manchaniel, they came in the 50s. They came in the early 50s, and I was born in 1960. So I'm a child of Windrush. And the question, because my parents, along with many Jamaicans who left, they actually wanted to come back home. They were going to England for 5 years, and they were going to come back home. And actually, my mother passed away aged 90, 8 years ago. My father, unfortunately, passed away in the 80s, just 60 years old. So it was about what's the plan B? What do we need to do to become sustainable? And actually recognizing that that was a big question. So I was curious, and I came up with some questions, and we had lots of conversations, and we did some national research. Now, the thing that Jamaicans and other Caribbean people did when they went to the UK and to Canada and to America is to set up community associations and community centres. Yes? Do we have Caribbean halls? Yes? Where you have christenings, funerals, dances, baptisms, all sorts of things, yes? Well, in the UK, that's happened there. And also, actually, I noticed in Jamaica, there are community spaces in the parishes, in the districts, there are school buildings that are used only during school time, they may be closed during holiday periods. There is community space. But what we found in the UK, because of the Windrush generation, let's just use that as an example, those spaces were being run by those people who are now my age and much older. Yes? Because it's first and second generation. So actually, we did a piece of research called A Place to Call Home, and we mapped nationally, put on a Google map, put on the digital mapping, to look at where the spaces were in the UK that were run by Caribbean people, and captured some of the stories and produced this national report. And what we found through the report, through A Place to Call Home, we found a few things. The leaders were aging, so there was an issue about sustainability and future leadership, that actually the spaces were not sustainable anymore because they'd been reliant on grants. And actually the system in the UK, because of austerity, had actually reduced the levels of grants to community-based organisations. And actually we were now being told that you needed to develop social enterprises. And as my colleague earlier said, not everyone can run a business, a social business. The intentions are good, the social commitments and social issues are needed, but actually to have that mindset, basically to talk about the money, on one level, and also to talk about the impact on another level. It was, we found that our elders actually found that a bit of a challenge. So the centres were not sustainable. And so we mapped those and we looked. And the third thing we found, surprise, surprise, that the leaders of those centres and spaces were women. Does that sound familiar? Okay. The women had been the stalwarts. They'd been there 20, 30, 40 years, opening up the centres, cleaning the centres, welcoming the groups, cooking the food, but they weren't necessarily the chair people or the treasurers, surprise, surprise. And the last thing we found was that the need for the next generation, the young people, it was really clear that we needed to bring the young people in to make these spaces sustainable. So part of our mission is to work intergenerationally. This was mentioned yesterday, and it's something, actually, what I do when I'm not involved in ballet, I actually also teach. So I'm a part-time academic. I teach at Goldsmiths University of London. And one of the areas that I'm particularly looking at is intergenerational leadership. And actually, it's about what happens in the intersection, if you get a Venn diagram, what happens in that intersection. Because me, as an older woman now, I'm learning so much from younger people. It's a challenge, and it makes you feel a bit insecure sometimes, because it's like, oh, what I don't know comes to the fore. But actually, it's a really interesting space for me to be in, intergenerationally. We're also developing the next generation of social leaders because that came from the research. We were doing a whole lot of work around that. We have clear strategic objectives within Biennial, but they didn't just come out, they took time because we're bottom up. So actually building community resilience and sustainability is really important. Knowledge generation and learning is really one of our objectives. Strategic partnerships and global diaspora connections, and that's why I'm here. We're beginning to model an approach, and actually when I looked at what we've been doing in our work, we've actually ended up with 6, and I think probably 7 I's. So Biennial started off initiating little projects in the community because we're grassroots. We then went on to incubate because people would come to us and say, I've got an idea, can you help us incubate the idea? So we've got 5 incubation projects. But also we became a bit of a mouthpiece because the people who work with me were quite noisy. We like to talk, but we like to do. So we became a bit of a mouthpiece, and we've been given infrastructure support to groups around the country that also have centres that need development. And as I said, we're intergenerational, we're international, and we're innovation. The initiative projects that we do, nobody else are doing those particular projects in our country. So we're actually trying to do innovative things, and even our incubation projects are quite unique. This has been, first and foremost, a part-time venture. We've now just grown into full-time staff. So we started in 2014 when we first registered as a company limited by guarantee. And over the last 5 years, we're now up to about 320,000 in terms of our turnover. As was mentioned earlier, we have made a profit. We've made about 30% across the piece, but it's invested back into the business. We've not actually had any investment from outside agencies. Of course, we've had grants and we get commission for services, but we've not actually had investors investing in the business so far. And that's, I mean, it's an interesting listen to the conversation, but actually we've not gone down that route so far. So as I said, we've got 3 full-time equivalent staff and a team of 15 associates. And as we know and has been said, the diaspora and Jamaicans are hugely resourceful, talented and skilled. So the associates that work with me are from business planning and housing and architecture and so on and so forth. But we have got lots of different income streams. So we've actually been commissioned to provide different services. We run a community market, for example, and we're commissioned to run that. We have had grants. We have, we charge our incubators for us incubating them, and also we do management consultancy and training, so we're commissioned to do a whole host of things with other organisations. These are some of our projects that we've initiated. One that's there which you might like is called Wise Women on Wheels. So it's cycling for older black and minority ethnic women, health benefits, younger women teaching older women to cycle, and it's just been really amazing. And also we've produced young leaders. These are some of our incubation ideas. The group at the bottom called Black Roots, ROOTZ, is actually a group of black-led growers. We come from agricultural backgrounds. In the UK, and I'm sure this is the same in America and Canada, we have allotments, we grow. But what we found was, again, the allotment holders were becoming older and not able to manage the spaces to grow callaloo, to grow spinach. Some of our growers grow chocho, and some of them grow pumpkins and so on. So the Black Roots group that we're incubating is a way of bringing people together into a collective and collaborative organisation in order to support the growers. Just a couple of other things. Infrastructure support is really important, and what was mentioned was a toolkit earlier. Yes, we produced a community business toolkit with 3 strands in the toolkit. It's around the governance, how you manage the business, the community business. It's about the social impact, yes, as well as the kind of services that you provide. So the business will take you through that, and we produced that toolkit out of working with 5 different organisations in Manchester and in London. Just a couple other things I just want to say, and I know that time is very short. The Biennial, we found ourselves in a position to also take over a community space ourselves, not just to help others, but actually to be part of a space. So we are now directors of a 3.5-acre horticultural centre in Tottenham, North London. And it's actually a community business, because in the UK we have social enterprise movement, and then within that we have community business. And the community business is locally rooted, it's accountable to the local community, it trades for the benefit of the community, and it has broad community impact. So we're now the stewards of that particular space. And actually, I think one of the implications is that because it's a consortium, 3 organisations actually run Wolves Lane Centre. It's a consortium, and I think as diaspora people, we need to think about not just donating, not just investing, but also about can we build real consortia with organisations that are here? Because actually, the 3 organisations that come together for Wolves Lane, there's growers, because we have allotments there, we have glass houses, we have woodlands, so we have one organisation that are the growers. We deal with community development, leadership, social enterprise, and then we have a vegetable box scheme where vegetables are taken to communities. So between the 3 different organisations, we have a range of skills that we can bring to this very exciting social space. So there's some of our impact. We've reached over 3,000 people. We've reached 75% females. We've worked in very many countries because of the international work that we do. And we haven't yet worked in Jamaica directly. However, we are going to be, we have put in an EU proposal for to work with the Rasta village in Montego Bay and with Malawi and with Tobago, and we will hear within the next month whether we've been successful. It's about $160,000 US project around enterprise that we've actually submitted to the EU. Okay, so some of our achievements and some sources of information that I've actually quoted earlier. So just to finish, because I'm aware of time, just a couple of points that I think might be helpful, just drawing this together. The 6 I's that I mentioned, and it's really from conversations I've had since I've been here, you know, I get a sense that some of the initiatives and support that's being given by the diaspora within Jamaica, and I'm talking about the UK because I was having a conversation with UK people, were slightly kind of scattergun. Now that may or may not be the truth, I don't know, it's just an assessment. And I think that, you know, in terms of thinking about the kind of range of projects and initiatives, whether it's incubation, whether it's initiatives or whether it's infrastructure, a model that actually helps map who's doing what kinds of projects might be helpful. And also, I just want to mention the consortia arrangements, because I think there's a real strength in building consortia, not just donation. And the last thing I want to say is, you know, there's this adage which says, if you give a man a fish, he will eat for a day. And if you teach a man to fish, he will feed himself and that will be sustained. I really would like to challenge us as Diaspora, yes, to do philanthropy, but also to actually engage in community empowerment. Because actually, you know, I'm not going to be here in the next 30 years just because I'm nearly 60. I hope my daughter, who's 25, will be here in our places. I can't guarantee that, but I really hope she is. But at least it's what empowering local communities. It will give an opportunity for some sustainability. Thank you.
That is excellent work. Can you take me under your wing and mentor me? Why not? And it's so good to see that your tentacles of love are now reaching into Jamaica, the rest of the village. Give her a hand clap. Remarkable. Remarkable. Now, we're very pressed for time, so I'm going to have to kind of express things from this. You know, from this point, we're going to have some questions and answers, obviously, but here are the rules. That microphone is named Herb McKinley, and that one is Merlin Otti, and the three persons who reach them the quickest will have questions. Oh, give them a hand clap. 1, 2. Oh, we have a Merlin Otti in Herb's line. Okay. All right, can we just hold it at that? Thank you very much. In the interest of time, we just ask for your understanding. Will you make your questions very concise, not speeches or presentations, although we will take affirmations. And we're going to ask the persons who are giving the answers to be equally concise. Go ahead.
Greetings, panelists. Question to Mrs. Jacobs-Bonnie. I am compelled to make a difference in my country, but I feel stagnated. I am aware of 2 scholarship opportunities to study in the UK. How can the Diaspora assist in creating more funding opportunities for Jamaicans to do postgraduate studies in the UK?
Thank you very much for your question. The British Council traditionally, as most people know, offers scholarships. However, in Jamaica, that is not something that we have the opportunity to do. The scholarships that I know of that are being offered for study in the UK are the Shevening Scholarship, which is managed by the High Commission, British High Commission. In terms of what more could the Diaspora do to create scholarship opportunities for young people here, I think it's quite important, as our last speaker said, that there is a level of community engagement and connectivity. So if we have diasporans who are working in universities such as yourself, to connect with our universities here to create those opportunities. I give my example. There was an area of study that I wanted to pursue at UWI at a PhD level, and I couldn't because it was only offered at Goldsmith and you didn't have a connection. So I would say connectivity and community.
Thank you. Next.
Question for Mrs. Bonner. I'm Steve Stevenson, the former director of the Race Equality and Human Rights Service in Bristol.
Hello.
My question is, why is it you have got no budget for equality and diversity and inclusion? I'm aware that EHRC budget will come to the vote in the UK.
Well, the British Council has a number of policies that we as offices are mandated to implement. And equality, diversity, and inclusion is a policy that we're mandated to mainstream. So we are measured on it, and we have to provide reporting. But in terms of a budget line in our programming budgets, it isn't something that we program for because we're expected to mainstream it through all of our programs. So our objective is to mainstream it, And so through our delivery, we share the knowledge and understanding of equality, diversity, and inclusion, but it isn't an individual budget line. That's what I meant when I said it's not funded.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Carmita Barnes, and I'm the president of an organization that assists individuals who have been involuntarily returned. And my question is to Mr. Fraser from USAID, and also...
Speak in the microphone, please.
I'm sorry, microphone check. Okay. And also to Mrs. Barrett Scott regarding these, social enterprise and projects that you're working with, and how can we involve individuals who have been so marginalized that they feel not a part of the, the community. I reached out to USAID on 3 occasions, and all occasions we were told that we could not get, assistance for the deported population. So what I'm, posing to you is it open to individuals, such as the people who I work and advocate for?
Thank you. Onika, 30 seconds. Jason, 30 seconds.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Onika, well, she did mention USA.
I'm sorry, I'll go first. Thanks. The project, as I mentioned, Social Enterprise Boost Initiative, came to an end in 2018. December 2018. However, Social Enterprise Jamaica, which is the next step, there is a possibility that if there are persons working to address those types of issues and would need sustainability in terms of access to training, that they could apply to Social Enterprise Jamaica to become a part of that program.
Thank you. Did you say something about
Yes, and also yes, there. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yes. I think, depending upon the population that you're talking about, there's obviously the U.S. government has laws and regulations as to how we can use our foreign assistance dollars. That's separate from the way what we're talking about in terms of social enterprises. Now, social enterprises can invest in youth from A&D programs, and they have done that. And we've supported things like that in Jamaica. So for young people who have been, remanded into custody, but for non-serious crimes. With respect to crimes in which people may have been deported from in the U.S., that's a much more complicated political question that you're asking. And we are restricted, unfortunately, USAID is restricted from targeting those communities. It's not to say that people who are involved in those things can't benefit from USAID programs, but in terms of the targeting of those communities, it's just a legal restriction that we're about.
Thank you. Next.
This question is for Mrs. Jacobs-Bonnick. I noticed that you didn't get an opportunity based on time to get into the creative industry side of the British Council's mandate. So I went on your website, it says that you have a Caribbean script development workshop. The last time it happened was 2017. Am I correct? That's what I saw. Question here is, though, I have a production company in LA and in Jamaica, so I want to know if it's a situation where we want to be a part of that particular workshop, or if we have other ideas that we would like to present within that industry. Is it something that British Council would consider partnering, sponsoring, collaborating on?
Okay, just very quickly, we, as I was saying, we co-design and we co-deliver, so we're not a funding agency. So what that means is that, we work in partnership with individuals who either come to us with programs or we create our own programs. That particular program is now called Film Lab. It started out as a script development workshop. It is now a program that we deliver jointly with JAMPRO and JAFTA, which is the Jamaica Film and Television Association. And it is actually an end-to-end programming for producers, scriptwriters, and editors. And we just completed our first cohort. That cohort had nominations again. So the idea behind that is that we're developing the bookends, if you like. So the production and distribution. So if you wanted to be a part of that, you would have to apply through an open call. We are working with filmmakers, producers, and scriptwriters in Jamaica, however. If you have an idea, do come to us. If it's a part of what we are doing with Film Lab, and we can see how that can work, along with our partners, we will definitely give it some consideration.
Thank you. Next.
Panel. Question to Ms. Field. You've spent 25 years in Africa doing business, yeah? I was at the presentation where the Ghanaian leader invited. I was at the presentation at the opening ceremony where the Ghanaian leaders actually invited all Jamaicans and Africans to come back and do business in Africa. Do you think we could use that model to bridge the gap between the young generation and the elder generation to do fantastic business? Because, you know, I think the power that we have has been strangled. And I think we need to be unleashed.
In terms of young people and elders in Jamaica, to come to Jamaica to do business, yes. I think that there's infinite opportunity to do that. And I think that, I mean, you know, in terms of even things like rites of passage, I think it's really important that older people, we bring our young people to Jamaica, because, you know, when you look at the creativity and innovation of young people in Africa, in America, in Canada, and here, you know, actually, I think that would really add, you know, substantially to the economy. Just one other little comment I wanted to make about education, because this came up yesterday in the Diaspora session with our High Commission, with a young woman asking about scholarships. It came up yesterday. And actually, you know, a couple of things that I think is really important. In terms of collective power of the diaspora, you know, if, for example, two or three things could happen, but if each region said we were going to sponsor collectively, you know, a number of young people from our island, from this island, to come to our countries, and we did this as a system, because operating as a system has power. And actually, there was a young woman who really wanted to come to the UK to do an undergraduate degree, but there was no opportunity for scholarships. And I said, well, actually, you know, I have a model where a friend of mine was actually people paid £2 a month in the 80s for him to come from South Africa to the UK to study, and actually he studied with that very small investment. So I think it's about sometimes not thinking big, but acting collectively.
Thank you. We're losing the competition with lunch. Last question.
My name is Marilyn Tapper, and I'm president for the International Returning Residents Association. And this question is really directed to everybody. It's really, my organization incorporates all the diaspora, wherever you come from. And my question is, what is the sort of support systems that we have in Jamaica, based on the analysis of Yvonne, when he talks about us from the UK. We want to sort of set up, our organisation would like to set up a system whereby we can sort of incorporate, because I'm the first immigrant children that went to America, now went to the UK, now retired. And based on Yvonne's analysis, which is clearly outlined, those are the sort of difficulties that we are sort of facing. And we'd like more and more younger people from the diaspora to come to Jamaica. But of course, we lack the support system when we come. And those of us who came here, this groups like mine sort of help to embrace us so that we can sort of live in the community. It's very difficult, having spent, for me, nearly 60 years in the UK, coming back to Jamaica, and we sort of want to sort of address that question of a sort of supportiveness for people who come to the diaspora. Because, and you know, when you come here, sometimes things might fail, and who supports us? Or who support those projects? Thank you very much.
Well, that's a perennial concern. I don't even think, does it need, I don't think it even needs a response, because there's no, this is part of the solution, and it has to be an ongoing effort. But we do need to have an institutionalized response within the overall infrastructure that supports the diaspora. Could I ask you all to just put your hands together for a truly wonderful set of people, presenters, as well as panelists. Come on, do better than that for them. Pretend they're not being paid for doing this. You're correct in that assumption. And just to end, thank you for giving us just 2 to 3 more minutes. I would definitely just like to thank some persons. Jamaica Stock Exchange, this is not their presentation, but the latest advancement was with the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. And I really think in terms of this conference and this session, we need to recognize Merlene Street Forest. Give her a hand clap. I've already mentioned Professor Neville Ying, who chairs the advisory board. Also people who are not in the bright lights, like Neville Ellis, would you clap for him? Nora Blake, These are people who are just doing yeoman service. Also, how do you help? How do you assist? There are two channels, two areas of need. One area is for you to, through your philanthropic giving. Jamaica Stock Exchange, in terms of the launch of the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, is approaching this as corporate social responsibility. It's an electronic platform. You can log in, we'll give you the information. You can see their organizations, there are 5 presently who are listed, and you can make your contribution. For those of you who are supporting organizations in Jamaica, would you recommend to them that they apply for listing on the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange as a way of getting support? I don't know about you, but when I was in the diaspora, I sent money home gladly, but I always prayed for the day when I would be weaned of it, because I didn't want to make dependence of the people I'm helping. So please, you can help in either of those two ways. Let me also say again that halfway down the hall, there are 5 listed enterprises. Would you just visit them, please? Give them a word of encouragement, take the brochures, and support them after today. On Thursday, the usual community day in this service day, in these conferences, there will be visits to all 5 enterprises. And you'll get more details about that, the departure time for the bus and all of that. Let me also just thank some of our sponsors. NCB Capital Market. All right, I'm going to just let Prof do that because you may want to call them for a photo op. Would you come then and do that? Thank you again. Thank you very much for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, so not to hold up the lunch too long. Just want to indicate to you that we have 7 corporate groups who have already made donations. I'm just going to call them, ask them to come to the front, or that you can see that people are actually donating. NCB Capital Market, come forward please. Rita, over here, you take a picture. Oh, okay. The photographer will tell you where to go, so go to that. Which way do you go? There's a step here? Both sides. No, right. Proven? What kind of finger club is that? Jamaica National Group. Grace Kennedy. We also have Knutsford Express, but they're on the road. And Virgin Paints. While they're gathering for the picture, let's just tell you, you have to register for visiting the projects tomorrow. Departure is at 8:30. Lunch will be at Alpha, and we get you back to your site by 4:30. All right, go ahead with your picture taken. Give them a round of applause, please. All right, could we ask everyone to get back here as close to 2:30 as possible? In other words, we're going to have a quick lunch because we have the Commissioner of Police coming. Tell you all about public safety. Let me thank our moderator, Dr. Henley Morgan. Give him a round of applause, please. Thank you, sponsors. Thank you, panelists, speakers. And now, but don't leave speakers and panelists. We have some gifts for you. Put on it. Oh, you give a gift. see you.
I'll take it with the stuff in the background.
Okay.
He's doing interviews outside.
This side, okay.
He's going to be outside.
Yes, the meals are hot here.
Have some rice and that.
So ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you to go and have your lunch and come back and prepare for our next session. Mr. Ghana, I need you to go and eat, have a good lunch. So I'm encouraging you all to go because I know you're hungry. Go and have some lunch, get prepared for the next session. Also, I want you to go and visit the marketplace. We have wonderful products and services being offered, especially from our community groups right here in Kingston. So I want you to go and visit. When you have the time, go and visit your local economic initiatives. And remember to sign up for your 3K walk and run at Farm Up JA. Their desk is right at the entrance of the conference. So again, for our delegates, yes, 3K, walk and run, that's on Thursday morning. We'll be walking from the Emancipation Park right out there. So you guys will have your sneakers, and guess what, we're promoting health and wellness. So I want you all to go and have something to eat and come back, and we will start the next session.
I've been further, Alright, thanks again. Let's get a quick picture. Let's see if I find the right thing. See if I find something. Sir.